with Section 1. It starts with the first drop. Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a slow, sodden walk through one of the darkest realities of the medieval world. What it meant to live through rain that didn't stop. Picture yourself in a village made of wood, mud, and prayer, where the sun hasn't broken the clouds in days, no, weeks. Rain drums on the roof like hooves. The ground beneath you oozes like soup. And you're about to learn why no one truly thrives in a medieval downpour. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know where and when you're listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins in the usual way. A few clouds roll in from the west. The smell of rain rides the air, sharp, clean, innocent. You're used to that. Rain waters the barley. Rain fills the cistern. Rain keeps the thatch cool. A good soaking now and then is a blessing. But this isn't that kind of rain. This time, the sky doesn't let up. Day 1 becomes day 2, then 3, and still the clouds cling low and endless. You stand outside your cottage, wrapped in wool that's already damp, staring up at the sky like it owes you an explanation. It gives none. By the end of the first week, paths become swamps. Your boots, if you're lucky enough to own a pair, are soaked through. If not, your feet squish in sacks or rawhide, rubbed raw with each slippery step. The village begins to change. The smell of wet rot creeps into everything. Your bedding, your cloak, your bread. The fire in your hearth coughs out smoke and goes dark, unable to dry itself. Even the animals seem disturbed. Sheep bleat nonstop, pigs refuse to root, and dogs whine with no obvious cause. It's not just the weather, it's the feeling. Like the world's gone sideways. Like the rhythm of things, sunrise, chores, meals, sleep, has fallen apart. Without the sun, there's no anchor to the day. You start waking up at odd hours, eating at twilight, feeling a growing pressure in your skull, as if your brain's trying to adjust to a world that no longer follows the rules. The elders say it's the longest rain in living memory, and in a medieval village, that's a serious claim. Memories are records. The old man who remembers the last long rain also remembers the cattle that drowned and the family who vanished into the woods and never came back. By the second week, the puddles have become ponds. Your neighbors begin digging trenches, crude, shallow ditches to reroute water away from homes. It helps a little, for a while, until the ground beneath them collapses from saturation and the trenches become mud rivers that invade your kitchen. You try to stay dry, but it's like trying to outrun fog. Dampness seeps in through seams, cuffs, floorboards. Your breath mists in your own house. You wrap yourself in furs and burlap, huddle by the hearth, but the hearth is dying. The thatch drips onto the embers, sizzling them out like they're made of paper. You've never truly appreciated dryness until now. Historians still argue how common long-term rainfall events were during the medieval period, but records, written and oral, point to several terrifying examples. Chroniclers described black weeks where it rained from moon to moon. The Great Deluge of 1315 across Europe led to widespread famine. Soil turned to clay, crops rotted in their beds, and people simply stopped writing about the weather because it became everything. In your story, the rain hasn't even reached that pitch yet, but it's getting close. You stop going to chapel because the path is ankle deep in filth. The priest says it's a test of faith. The local healer says it's the god's wrath or the forest's revenge. One woman whispers that she saw a line of hooded figures standing still at the tree line during the third night of thunder. No one believes her, but no one doesn't believe her either. You try to find comfort in routine. You peel turnips, you card wool, you scrub the same mug over and over. But the sound of the rain follows you in your dreams, in your ears, behind your eyes. It becomes part of your thoughts. You hum to drown it out, but the rhythm always slips back in. Drrr. It's not just the sound. It's what the rain is hiding, because visibility in the downpour is nearly zero. You can't see who or what is moving near your door. One morning you find strange footprints outside, larger than a man's, bare, deep. No one admits to seeing anything. But the animals won't leave their shelters now. The chickens stop laying. The goats stop bleeding. Something is wrong. Something is watching. Quirky side note. In parts of medieval Europe, people believed that rain that lasted more than 12 days was morning sky, a sign that something terrible had died. Maybe a king, maybe a god. One obscure Flemish poem even blamed prolonged rain on fairies cursed with eternal sorrow, crying across the veil between worlds. That's how desperate people were for answers. You're not sure which to believe, but every day you wish the sky would just stop crying. Even the soil seems to sag beneath the weight of it. And you, well, you begin to sag too. You count the days now not in numbers but in losses. Your boots, ruined. Your firewood, molded. Your bread, wet and sour. Your hope fraying like the hem of your cloak. By the time the third week approaches, you're already someone different. The rain has sculpted you like stone, eroded your comforts, hollowed out your rituals. And the worst part? You know it's just the beginning. Section 2, Mud, Misery, and Mold. By the 24th day, you no longer dream of the sun. Your memories of warmth feel like someone else's story. Instead, you dream of dripping ceilings, soggy floors, and a world slowly turning to mush. Everything you touch feels soft in the wrong places, like the bones have gone out of it. The rain doesn't just fall, it seeps into your walls, your clothes, your thoughts. Your home, once a haven, has become a swamp in disguise. The thatch above your head weeps steadily. It was never designed for rain like this, not this constant sideways sort of punishment that slices through the air like knives. You try to plug leaks with straw, rags, and even dried manure, but it's like trying to stitch shut a wound that won't stop bleeding. The floorboards warp under your feet. You used to walk with a firm step. Now you squish. Your bed, layered with old wool and straw, has grown a sour scent. Mold curls around the edges like ivy. You lie on it because there's nowhere else, but every night it's harder to sleep. The blankets stick to your skin. The damp reaches your bones. By now, every cottage smells the same, of mildew, smoke, and despair. People talk less. They move slower. Even laughter, once a staple during chores or meals, fades into long, damp silences. You hear coughing more than conversation. Your neighbor's baby wheezes all night. Your uncle's chest rattles like a wooden box full of nails. You try not to think about it, but the truth is thick in the air. You are all slowly rotting. Historians often point to poor ventilation and constant moisture as a deadly combination in medieval homes. Thatched roofs weren't just leaky. They were breeding grounds for fungi, mites, and bacteria. In long rains, everything, from tools to food to furniture, began to decay in place. You see it firsthand now. The granary walls have gone soft. The stored apples collapsed into mush. Even your linen, kept dry in the chest for feast days, now blooms with green patches you dare not touch. You take to hanging clothes over the fire, even if they weren't wet, just to kill the smell. But there's not enough firewood. You knew there wouldn't be. The forests are too muddy to enter. Your boots get sucked into the muck like the earth itself is hungry. Once, a boy from the far end of the village went to fetch kindling. He hasn't come back. Maybe he turned around. Maybe he's stuck. Or maybe he sank. You don't go looking. Not because you don't care, but because you know what you'll find if you do. The roads are impassable. The bridges have washed out. The river swelled and dragged away the last of the carts. Traders haven't been seen in days. The only new faces you spot are carved into the trunks of trees by villagers desperate to keep their minds intact. The weight of the rain presses on your chest. It makes you feel small, forgotten. Even the birds have gone quiet. You used to hear robins, crows, nightingales. Now, only the drip-drip of water and the creak of sodden wood. You begin to fear the silence more than the rain. It's in that silence that mold creeps in. You notice it first in the corners of your house, little blooms like smoke on the walls. Then it appears on your cheese, your grain sacks, even your sandals. You wipe it away, it returns. You boil what you can. You chew through the sourness. You hold your breath, but you can't hold it forever. Some believe mold and long rain is a punishment. A woman you know says she saw a goat born with 2 tongues. Another claims her husband woke up with hair growing on his palms. The baker's wife starts speaking to no one. She sits in the mud outside her door, rocking, eyes blank. Her house is filled with black spores. No one helps her clean it. You don't speak about her anymore. Quirky side note, in the Middle Ages, people believed certain molds were demons that nested in corners and thrived on sin. Some would burn rosemary or throw salt to banish them, rituals that today might have actually helped dry the air slightly. You try both. Neither works. You keep the fire going as long as you can, huddling close. Your breath fogs. The walls weep. You scratch a prayer into the wood above your door, just in case something else is watching. You begin to notice your fingernails darkening at the edges. Is it dirt or something else? You don't ask. You just keep working, cleaning, scraping, boiling what's left, eating it even if it smells off. The line between nourishment and survival grows thinner every day. You no longer wear your best tunic. It's ruined. You wrap yourself in whatever's driest. Your hair stays braided, not for fashion, but because you dread combing out the tangles wetness breeds. And still it rains. Mud slicks the yard. Chickens wade through filth. Children fall and don't get up right away. The healer stops by with bundles of nettle and instructions to boil everything before drinking it. No one has the firewood to follow her advice. You start drinking rain straight from the barrel. It tastes of roof. You wonder, in the quietest part of your mind, how long a person can stay wet before they simply dissolve. You begin to feel more like moss than skin. But somehow you keep waking up, and every day the sky still weeps. Section 3. Flooded roads, trapped villages. By now your village might as well be an island. The road to the next town, if you could still call it a road, has vanished beneath a slurry of mud, roots, and broken wagons. The shallow river that once marked the boundary between your land and the next has become a surging, angry force, its banks bloated and brown, filled with branches and things that used to be roofs. You stand at the edge of it, your cloak plastered to your body, staring across the divide. On the other side, nothing moves. No smoke from chimneys, no sound from carts, just trees bending and weeping under the weight of rain. No one's come through in days. No monks seeking alms, no travelers bearing news, no merchants hauling salt, honey, or grain. And worst of all, no tax collectors, which means even the Lord's men can't reach you. You're on your own now. You're used to isolation in theory. Most people don't travel more than a day from their birthplace in your lifetime. But this is different. This is enforced, trapping. Like the village is being swallowed, house by house, until only the spire of the church will be left above the muck like a tombstone. The bridge is gone. That much is certain. A young man tried to cross it to reach the mill last week, and the logs beneath his feet snapped like twigs. They found one of his boots wedged in a tree 2 days later. Just the boot. So now you don't cross. You don't leave. You wait. And the waiting changes things. At first it was a problem of supply. No salt means your meat starts to spoil. No flour means oatcakes become thinner and thinner. Without herbs from the outside, remedies become superstitions. The healer's bag is nearly empty, and she's taken to whispering prayers over bruised knees instead of applying salves. You pretend not to notice. With no outside news, rumors become currency. Someone says the king is dead. Another swears he heard a baby crying in the woods. There's talk of bandits, witches, armies, ghosts. You believe and disbelieve them in equal measure, depending on how desperate the day feels. One thing's for sure, you are cut off. Historians still argue whether these kinds of flood isolations were common, but in regions near river valleys, like those along the Rhine, the Seine, or the Thames, accounts of whole hamlets vanishing in the deluge were recorded. Some were abandoned entirely, never rebuilt. Others stayed put and changed forever. You stay, not because it's wise, but because there's nowhere else. You stop using the front path, too soggy. Instead, you tiptoe along the hedgerows, using stones and fence rails to keep your boots from sinking. The animals are trapped too. The cow hasn't moved from its shelter in 3 days. Its milk is thin and sour. The chickens squawk with panic when the water reaches their roosts. You lift them one by one to the loft, where they sleep now beside sacks of spoiled grain. The blacksmith's forge is silent. There's no point in hammering metal when even the nails are rusting in their buckets. The tavern, always rowdy with song or fighting, is quiet now. Men sit shoulder to shoulder in silence, nursing weak ale and staring out windows like dogs hoping their masters will return. A boy tries to leave. He says he wants to see if the old path to the abbey is still passable. You help him pack a bundle of dried meat, tie his cloak close, press his hands with both of yours. He doesn't come back. They say he might have made it. They say a lot of things. By the fourth week of rain, you realize the isolation isn't just physical, it's mental. You begin forgetting the sound of bells from the neighboring parish. You forget the smell of road dust, like the rough laughter of passing soldiers, the sight of distant fires on the hills. Even your memories of open sky begin to feel dreamlike, like visions in a fever. You're not sure what's worse, the drowning of the present or the erosion of the past. Quirky side note, in parts of medieval Brittany, villagers would mark flood seasons with carved posts showing the water's height. Some believed that if the carvings were erased by water, the village's name would be forgotten by God. So they would pray not for sun, but for memory. You begin to understand that fear, because you're starting to forget who you were before the rain. Your world has shrunk. Its borders are the edges of this village. Its roads, now rivers, its news, now whispers, and still the rain keeps falling, and still the people stop looking outward and begin turning inward. You used to know everyone's name. Now you know their coughs, their footsteps, the way their roofs sound when they leak. You used to think the world was big, full of distant cities and holy places. Now it feels like the size of a grave, and the walls are closing in. Section 4, Rain Madness and Village Superstitions. You start seeing things, not grand visions or angels parting the sky. No, what you see are small, strange details. Things that at first you think must be tricks of the light or tricks of your mind, worn thin by damp clothes and colder days. But then they keep happening. A face in the window, gone when you blink. Footprints in the mud outside your door that aren't yours, nor your neighbor's. A shape moving beneath the surface of the waterlogged field, too large to be a rat, too slow to be a dog, and yet no one else seems to notice. Or if they do, they've learned not to speak of it. The village begins to unravel, not with fire or screams, but with whispers. That's always how it starts. It begins with your neighbor's boy. He stops speaking, just sits on the bench by the hearth all day, blinking too slowly, hands folded neatly. When you visit, his mother shuffles nervously, says he's just tired, just hungry. But her voice is tight, her eyes always glancing to the corner of the room. Then it's the cowherd's wife, who insists she saw her dead sister standing in the rain. She describes the sister's dress down to the embroidered hem, muddy but intact, she swears. She was smiling, she says, like she'd never left. After that, it spreads. The old woman who reads psalms every morning now mutters to herself in Latin, lines no one taught her. A girl near the edge of the village starts burying feathers in the garden, says they keep the water spirits from pulling her through the floorboards. The tavern keeper lights 7 candles each night and refuses to speak after sunset. People are unraveling, slowly like thread pulled from a tunic, quiet at first, but deadly all the same. Historians still debate the psychological impact of weather patterns in medieval times, especially among isolated communities. Long winters were known to trigger cabin fever, but long rains, unceasing, heavy, rotting rains, were arguably worse. No sun for weeks, no growth, just decay and damp. You start avoiding mirrors, not because you're vain, but because the person in them no longer looks like you. Her cheeks are hollow, her eyes too bright, her hair clings to her scalp in wet strands. Sometimes she moves when you don't. You begin to dread the sound of rain more than thunder. At least thunder ends. Rain is endless, relentless, soft and loud all at once. It seeps into your thoughts, your dreams. One night, you dream your cottage floods to the ceiling, and when you wake, the pillow is soaked, though there's no leak above your bed. Maybe it was sweat, or maybe the roof is crying again. In desperation, people turn to old customs, older than the church, older than memory. Charms begin appearing on door frames, a bundle of rowan twigs, a dead mouse nailed to a beam, an egg yolk in a bowl of salt. You know these things. You were told to avoid them. Pagan nonsense, the priest would say. But the priest left weeks ago to find dry ground, and he hasn't come back. So now, no one stops you when you chalk circles on your door, when you whisper to the hearth before bed, when you burn rosemary, not to purify, but to remember. There's a superstition in your village, one not written down, only passed mouth to mouth, that during long rains the village slips slightly to one side. Not the buildings, not the earth, but the reality of it. Like you are slowly sliding into a version of the world where things have soured, where logic no longer applies, where the dead remember your name. You used to laugh at this idea. Now you look for signs. A cat staring at nothing. A baby who won't stop crying at the same hour every night. A door swinging open against the wind, but never closing. The sky never brightens, just shifts from dark gray to ash gray and back again. The clouds press low, too low, and sometimes you feel like you could touch them if you stood on your toes. Once, you did, just to feel like something was still above you. Your food stores dwindle, but worse, your hope does too. You start eating less, not because you're noble or frugal, but because you don't want to eat. The idea of food disgusts you. The smell of onions makes you retch. The bread turns blue and fuzzy. You gnaw on a turnip like a rat and try not to cry when it tastes like wet cloth. You're not alone. Everyone's shrinking. Children cry without reason. Adults forget words. One man tries to dig a trench to the next village, convinced he can burrow under the rain. He makes it 20 feet before collapsing. His hands are blistered. His eyes don't focus anymore. You sit by the fire and think, what day is it? You don't know. Some villagers tie ribbons around their fingers so they can count the days since they last saw the sun. One girl has 17. One boy has none. Quirky historical footnote? In the 14th century, a group of monks in Flanders recorded a period of 40 days of rain and claimed it was divine punishment for gluttony. They took to flagellating themselves in the square every morning. No one stopped them. Some joined in, some watched, others hid. You understand this now. You don't flagellate, but you kneel every night, even if you're not sure who you're kneeling to. Because the rain doesn't feel natural anymore. It feels like it's watching. And still, you stay, because the worst part isn't the madness. It's the stillness between madnesses, when everything is almost normal. When someone starts humming while cleaning fish, when a child giggles at a fart, when bread rises properly for once, you dare to hope. Then the roof collapses on the apothecary's hut, just gone. A groan, a crash, and everything is mud again. You're not sure what holds you together now. Habit, perhaps, or fear of what you might become if you let go. But something in you refuses to break. Not yet. Not today. Section 5, the return of folklore and the fear of the wet moon. You begin to hear stories. Not new ones, old ones. The kind of stories your grandmother whispered when the fire burned low and the room grew dark enough to turn imagination into shape. They come back now without invitation, like moss blooming on damp wood. You don't know where they start or who says them first. They just spread. One story is about the wet moon. When the crescent hangs like a bowl instead of a sickle, people say it's catching tears from the sky. And when that bowl overflows, the world floods. No stopping it, no praying it away. The bowl must spill. And after, something always comes out with the water. Something that doesn't belong. You remember seeing the wet moon 4 nights ago, just hanging there, innocent, pale. You thought nothing of it. But now you're not so sure. There's a squelching in the earth when you walk, as if something underneath is shifting. A child goes missing. One moment she's playing near the goat shed. The next, gone. No scream, no sound, only a tiny shoe in the muck. They search, of course. They call. They dig. But there are no answers. Someone mutters about the river spirits. Someone else whispers, wet moon. You stare at the sky and feel sick. The old woman with no teeth begins talking to birds. Crows, mostly. Says they carry messages from beneath the water. Everyone avoids her now, but no one stops her. After all, she's lasted through 3 husbands and 2 plagues. Maybe she knows something. You'd mock her once, but not now. Because something is shifting. Even the animals feel it. The horses won't leave their stalls. The dogs growl at the fireplace. A cat jumps from the rafters and doesn't land properly, then hisses at the ceiling for an hour. Historians sometimes dismiss medieval folklore as mere coping mechanisms, distractions from a hard life. But there's something deeper at work here, something that feels more like warning than distraction. After all, when the earth rots beneath your feet and the skies won't stop weeping, is it really so foolish to believe that something dark is knocking? You clean your home more than usual, not because it's dirty, it's always dirty, but because it gives you control. You scrub the same spot on the table over and over. You check the latch twice, then 3 times. You line herbs across your sill, even if they're soggy and half dead. Lavender, rue, mugwort, none are fresh. All smell like mold, but you leave them there anyway, just in case. A boy in the village claims he saw something at the edge of the forest. He won't say what, just that it had no face and too many legs. He's not a liar, but the carpenter calls him one anyway. Then, 2 nights later, the carpenter's pigs vanish. No blood, no broken fence, just silence. The kind of silence that hangs like a fog over the houses now. It's not quiet, not peaceful. It's loaded, like the whole village is holding its breath. A farmer digs into a hill to make a new root cellar and finds bones. Human, maybe. Hard to tell with all the water damage. He covers them again. Doesn't tell the priest. Just mutters a prayer and moves his fence line 3 feet to the east. The midwife says the rain has turned all the babies sideways in the womb. 4 births this week, and not one smooth. 2 mothers lost. The others, gray-faced and quiet, as if they'd rather not speak about what they saw between lightning strikes. You try to laugh sometimes, just to prove you still can. But the sound feels strange in your mouth, like it doesn't belong to you. Once, your friend made a joke about rain turning people into fish. You both laughed so hard you cried. Now she won't come outside. Says the puddles have eyes. You go to check for yourself. You kneel in the yard and stare at a particularly deep pool. Your reflection stares back, warped, wide-eyed, mouth twitching. You lean closer, and for just a second, it moves on its own. You fall back hard, heart racing. It's nothing, you tell yourself, but you still avoid that puddle afterward. Quirky fact time: in 13th century Bohemia, villagers believed that if rain fell for more than 30 days, the village had been cursed by a drowned spirit. They'd send a child to the nearest crossroads to bury a loaf of bread in silence. If the bread remained unspoiled after 3 days, the curse would lift. No one remembers the exact version of the ritual here. But someone tries it anyway. You help bake the bread. You don't speak a word. 3 days later, the bread is gone. Not rotten, not nibbled, gone. The village doesn't celebrate. Instead, people board up their windows tighter. Some begin wearing their Sunday clothes every day, just in case they need to meet God sooner than expected. Others dig shallow trenches around their houses, not for drainage, but to mark the boundaries, as if drawing lines might keep the rain from washing them away. The worst part? It's working. Not the rituals, not the stories, but the belief. It feels like it's working. You feel sharper, more alert, like your skin knows something your mind doesn't, like your ancestors are whispering warnings through your bones. You don't dream of sun anymore. You dream of lanterns floating on dark water, of boats with no oars, of mouths opening beneath the surface. And in the dreams, you are smiling, because it finally stopped raining, and the silence feels worse. Section 6, when the sun returns but the dread remains. The rain stops, not with a fanfare, not with a dramatic final clap of thunder, but with a whimper. One morning you wake, and there's no patter on the thatch roof, no drip through the cracked slats above your hearth, just stillness. At first, you don't believe it. You wait, listening, watching the tiny puddle beneath the window, watching it sit still. You lean your head outside, just for a second, and breathe. Dry air. It smells wrong. Not fresh, not hopeful, just stale, as if the sky has run out of tears and left the world in a kind of holding pattern. You step outside. The ground squelches beneath your boots, thick and reluctant. The path you once walked daily is now a soft bog. Every footprint you leave behind fills with black water. A crow caws overhead and startles you. You jump. Then you laugh. That sound, it feels like it belongs to someone else. The village stirs slowly. People emerge like worms after a storm, blinking, hunched, suspicious of the light. It's not even true sunlight, just a grayish smear that brightens the horizon. But it's not rain, and that's enough for today. Someone tries to ring the chapel bell. It sticks halfway. A half-toned chime that echoes like a cough in a crypt. You go about your chores, but the rhythm's gone. Things that were once routine now feel strange. Unpacking sacks of root vegetables takes twice as long. You keep glancing over your shoulder. Fetching water from the well becomes a sprint. The well hasn't changed, but something about the shadows inside it makes your skin crawl. Historians say weather shifts brought psychological effects. They note that extended gloom led to melancholy, hallucinations, even violent outbursts. But the opposite, sun after prolonged rain, was often worse. It didn't feel like rescue. It felt like bait. like something pretending to be normal. You begin to feel the wrongness more than see it. A spoon moves slightly on the table. You chalk it up to the wind, but your windows are shut. A knock comes at your door, Jen gone. You open it to nothing but muddy footprints and silence. You start marking the days on the wall. The charcoal tally grows. 6 days without rain, then 7, then 10. You think hope would return, but instead you notice things thinning. The birds don't sing, the sheep don't bleat. Even the river, once overflowing, seems too quiet now, like it's holding its breath. You wake one morning to find every mirror in your home cracked. Not shattered, just fractured. A line running perfectly from edge to edge, as if drawn by a careful hand. No storm, no quake, just this. You remove them. You don't like who you see in them anyway. There's a tale told by a traveling monk that surfaces in hushed fireside retellings, that when a village survives a wet drowning, 40 days or more of continuous rain, it comes out the other side changed, not cursed necessarily, but shifted. The people who live there are never quite right again. Like food that's been boiled too long, it still feeds, but it doesn't taste the same. You remember that story now, and you wonder if it's been told about your village before. Children begin drawing strange things in the dirt. Not faces, not flowers, spirals, endless, tightening spirals. One child carves one into the wall of the chapel with a piece of iron. The priest finds it. He doesn't scold, he just paints over it, twice. Then the child vanishes. No scream, no trail, just like the girl before. You try to tell someone, but your voice feels thin, like it doesn't carry the weight it used to. Like language itself is framed. At night, you dream of hands, not people, just hands, reaching through walls, dipping into barrels, stroking your hair as you pretend to sleep. When you wake, the feeling lingers on your scalp like static. And the worst part? You're getting used to it. You used to be afraid. Now, you just expect it. The baker starts offering round loaves with symbols baked into the crust. He doesn't explain. No one asks. You buy one. It tastes fine. But you dream that night of teeth cracking open the crust, only the teeth aren't yours. They're watching you from inside. The ground begins to firm, finally. The puddles dry, the moss retreats. People pretend to smile, but every smile looks like a grimace. You notice your neighbor digging something behind her cottage. You wave. She doesn't wave back. That night, you hear whispers through your wall. Her house is 30 feet away. A scholar once claimed that during these post-deluge periods, communities experience what he called residual hysteria, a kind of communal trembling. But that term feels too clean, too clinical. What you're living through feels like folklore waking up. You see the wet moon again, but this time it's not alone. Next to it, a new star, bright, pulsing. No one says anything about it, not aloud, but everyone sees it. You start sleeping with a knife beside the bed, not because you expect danger, but because not having one feels like a risk. You don't know what you're protecting yourself from, only that you have to. Even the land, now dry, feels unwelcoming. You step on grass and it doesn't spring back. You breathe the air and it's too still. You pass people in the lane and they smile too long, too wide. You find a spiral etched into your own door one morning. You didn't draw it and no one else could have come in. You wipe it off, but the wood is stained underneath. Permanent. You sleep poorly. You eat less. But somehow you're still here. You don't know what's coming next, but you know the rain wasn't the end. It was the invitation. The whispering dryness in the games of the mind. You've grown accustomed to wet footsteps, soggy ceilings, the mold that grows like ivy along the corners of your walls. But what you're not prepared for, what none of you are, is dryness. When it arrives, it's not with warmth or ease, but with a bone-white glare that makes everything feel brittle. The rain left behind a ghost, and now the sun is bleaching its footprints. Your skin cracks, your lips split, the well grows shallow, and the water tastes like metal. The village rejoices at first. There's laughter, jokes about laundry finally drying, but it's hollow, and you all know it. A strange hush rides the wind, like the fields themselves are holding something back. Children refuse to play. The puddles are gone, but they say the eyes are still watching. One boy points to a shadow on a stone wall and says it moved. Another girl begins collecting beetles and arranging them in perfect circles. When asked why, she just shrugs. The crops sprout late, blades of green that look fine until you touch them. They crumble at your fingers. Too soft, too thin. Rot from below, someone mutters. Not enough good soul left in the ground. You attend a gathering, something like a festival, only nobody dances. You stand around a bonfire and pretend to be normal. The fire pops and everyone jumps. Someone drops a plate. You all pretend you didn't hear the whisper in the crackle, but you did. They say the mind plays tricks after trauma. Historians call it collective delusion or mass psychogenic illness. It happened during witch panics, during famines, after plagues. But it also happens now. You start hearing your name whispered when you're alone. The sound of your own breath becomes unfamiliar. The rustling of leaves behind you sounds just enough like footsteps to keep you walking faster. You wake one night and find yourself outside, barefoot, the door wide open behind you. You don't remember how you got there. You check for mud on your feet. Nothing. Dry, clean, wrong. You aren't the only one. 3 others confess similar stories, though you don't call them stories. Not yet. They're just strange events. Shared hallucinations, maybe. But you know better. In the morning, you find your pantry rearranged. Items stacked in neat pyramids, stones placed in bowls, salt scattered across the doorway, not by you. You don't clean it up, you just step over it. You hear the priest give a sermon about temptation and doubt, but his hands tremble and his eyes avoid the rafters. You notice a symbol scratched into the pulpit, a spiral, again faint but deliberate. He sees you notice and says nothing. You begin to lose time. Hours vanish. You sit down to mend a shirt, and suddenly the sun is gone and the hearth is cold. Your fingers are red with blood, not thread. You haven't sewn anything. The cow stops giving milk. The hens lay eggs with shells too soft to hold. A woman sees a toad crawl from her husband's mouth in the middle of the night. He doesn't remember, and yet you stay. Why? Because there's nowhere else to go. The roads are washed out, or so they say. The forest seems to shift its shape. One man tries to leave, but returns by nightfall, teeth chattering, hair wet though it hasn't rained in a week. He doesn't speak. Not even now. You keep living. That's what you do. You boil water for tea and add too much honey. You braid your hair too tightly, just to feel something. You sit by the hearth and recite prayers backward, not because it means anything, but because it doesn't. You walk to the river and toss in a stone. It doesn't splash. It simply vanishes. Your neighbor swears her husband is someone else. Looks like him, sounds like him, but wrong. She says he hums in his sleep now, a tune she's never heard. Says he stares at the fire too long. Says he talks to the shadow on their roof. The baker closes shop. He says the dough won't rise anymore, that the flour tastes like ash. You go to bed early. You light 2 candles instead of 1. You sing lullabies you don't remember learning, and still it watches. That thing you can't name. It's not the rain. It's not the dryness. It's the echo. The echo of what came in with the storm, what settled in your bones when your skin was soaked and your mind softened. It's still here. It hasn't left. It's only waiting. Waiting for what? Historians still argue whether post-disaster hauntings were psychological metaphors or genuine phenomena, whether people made them up or if they were unmade by them. But when you lie awake and feel the floorboards breathing beneath your mattress, metaphor feels like a poor excuse. You try to remember joy. It's a slippery thing. You remember dancing barefoot once, laughter echoing down a lane, a kiss behind a granary wall. All of it distant, like a story you were told, not one you lived. You try to bake bread. It rises, finally. But when you cut it open, the center is black, wet, pulsing. You throw it out. Or you try to. When you go to toss it, it's already gone. You stop cooking after that. The wind returns. Not storm wind, just a whispering breeze that rattles the shutters. But it doesn't blow the curtains, doesn't rustle the leaves, just whispers. Names, dates, promises. You stop trying to understand. You just survive, one day at a time. Section 8, the forgotten days and the shifting earth. You stop keeping track of days. The marks on your wall blur together, smeared by damp fingers or the strange, oily moisture that beads along the stone. Time itself begins to sag like a rope soaked through, heavy, slow, and unreliable. You rise in the morning, or what you think is morning, and wonder if it's the same day as yesterday, or the same day that started weeks ago and never quite finished. Your neighbors have stopped talking much, not out of fear, though that's still there, curled like smoke around every doorway, but out of weariness. as if words themselves are too heavy now. You exchange glances instead, small nods, a flick of the chin toward a cloud that doesn't move, or a patch of moss that looks suddenly like a handprint. Even the animals have changed. The dogs no longer bark, they whine, deep in their throats, and keep to corners. The cats stare at the ceiling and flinch at sounds no one else hears. The cows stand too still in the fields. You wave your hand in front of one's face, and it doesn't blink. The soil beneath your feet begins to feel strange. Too soft in some places, like a sponge. Too hard in others, like someone baked it. A farmer sinks up to his knees while walking across what should have been solid pasture. He says nothing when you help him out, just shakes his head and limps home. His boots are left behind, stuck in the muck. They're gone the next day. You feel your joints ache in new places. Your spine hums when you bend over to pick herbs. Something in the air has changed, drier, sharper, like powdered bone. Historians who study pre-modern weather events talk about atmospheric pressure and how people back then would sense changes with their bodies. But this isn't just barometric. This is personal. The world around you feels like it's watching you breathe and responding in kind. One night the moon turns red. You stand in the square with a few others. No one speaks. No one dares. It hangs low, full and thick, bleeding into the sky like an open wound. The priest calls it a sign, but doesn't finish the sentence. He goes home and nails his shutters closed from the inside. You sleep with garlic under your pillow now. You don't remember why. You just do. It's something your grandmother told you maybe, or something you read, or dreamed. Dreams and memories have become difficult to separate. Some nights you dream of a face you don't know, a woman with no mouth and too many fingers, and wake to find your window cracked open. You start noticing things that weren't there before. A red thread strung between two trees near the woods. A perfect circle of thorns in the middle of the field. A bundle of feathers hanging from your lintel, tied with hair. You take them down each time carefully, but new ones appear in new places, on your doorstep, inside your cupboard. Once, in the corner of your bed, you say nothing, because what would you say? The villagers try to carry on. A wedding is planned, two young people, barely old enough to wed, but perhaps hoping the ritual will reset the world. You attend. Everyone does. You bring bread, someone brings flowers. The couple says vows in voices barely audible. The wine tastes sour. The cake won't cut. When the bride lifts her veil, she's crying. Not tears of joy, just weeping. Afterward, no one speaks of it. You avoid mirrors. Even reflections in water make your stomach twist. Once you look down into the well and see someone looking back. Not your face, just eyes, wide and white and waiting. You light more candles now. Not for light, but for company, to fill the corners of your home with flickering presence. You speak aloud to the air, just to hear a voice. Sometimes the air speaks back, not in words, but in echo. You say, "I'm still here," and something stirs behind the wall. You grow used to the unease. You fold it like a blanket around your shoulders. Go about your work. Gather herbs, grind powder, chop wood, fix shoes, tend fire. These little rituals are your defense. They keep the strange at bay, at least for a while. But the ground is changing. One morning, you notice a crack running across the floor of your home. Just a hairline fracture. You touch it. It feels warm. You kneel and press your ear to it. You swear you hear breathing. Another day, the river bends differently. A new path, cutting through what used to be a field. Trees on its bank have begun to lean, as though being drawn towards something underground. Shifting plates, a historian might one day say. Natural erosion, seismic instability. But you know better. The earth isn't just changing, it's waking up. And maybe it's always been this way. Maybe the quiet and peace of the world were just its dreams. And now, with the rain washed away, the nightmares have taken hold. Your food stores are dwindling, not from spoilage, just vanishing. One day you have 3 jars of honey. The next one. The bread you bake grows smaller, no matter how much flour you use. The water in your pail refills less and less from the same stream. You don't tell anyone, because you know they're seeing it too, and because silence feels safer now. At night you lie awake and feel something scratching at the edge of your dreams. A presence, a memory, a voice that sounds like yours, but isn't. It whispers riddles, it asks questions, sometimes it begs. You don't answer. Not yet, but you know, sooner or later, you will. Because the world is waiting. not to end, but to change you, and it already has. Section 9, the black thread in the loom. You wake to the sound of spinning, not yours. Your spindle lies untouched by the fire, but something deeper, stranger. A rhythm beneath the world. Whir click, whir click. You listen, heart tight, eyes wide in the early gray. It's still there, as if the air is being spun into thread by something invisible and ancient. You rise carefully, like any sharp movement might snap the illusion. Outside, the village is shrouded in mist. Not fog. Mist. Fog sits in the air like a heavy blanket. But this moves, it curls, flows, pulses along the edges of things. You watch it wrap around your fence, your neighbor's chimney, your own legs. In your garden, something new has grown. A single stalk, black as pitch, stiff as bone, has pushed through the soil beside the lavender. You didn't plant it, you're sure. It smells like iron and sweet rot. You don't touch it. You don't even go near it. But it leans towards you when you turn to go. You feel it watching. You start seeing it elsewhere. By the chapel steps, at the corner of the granary, beside the well. Always alone, always upright, always waiting. A kind of weed, someone suggests. From the old world, maybe pagan, maybe not even from here. Someone else calls it witchgrass. But no one pulls it because no one dares. You visit the weaver. Her door is open, though it's barely dawn. Inside, the loom clacks with its usual rhythm. Only she's not working it. She's just staring at the pattern unfolding. Black thread woven through white. A simple design, symmetrical, but wrong. Like a melody that resolves in a note you've never heard before. You reach out to touch the cloth, but she grabs your wrist. Don't, she says. Her voice cracks. It knows when you do. You leave without asking questions. Outside, the mist has thickened. You hear murmurs in it now. Not words, but syllables. A chorus that never finishes its song. That day, the sun doesn't rise. The sky stays the color of old milk. Everything glows faintly, wrongly. Shadows fall upward. You walk past the butcher's shop and see no meat inside. Only stones on hooks. No one seems surprised. You begin to think the village has become untethered. You're not sure if time is passing or folding. Your dreams bleed into your waking hours. You see a man in a bird mask walking through your home. You blink. He's gone. You glance into your tea, and for a second it's full of teeth. You stop talking. Everyone does. Communication becomes gestures, nods, scratches on wood. You speak in symbols now, drawn in ash or chalk or flour. The priest carves runes into the chapel walls. He says they're protected. You don't argue. He doesn't look at you anymore. Just at the ceiling where the beams groan like they're bearing more weight than they should. Children vanish. First one, then two. Then a group. They go into the woods, they say, looking for birds, for berries, for the voices that call at dusk. No one goes after them, not because they don't care, but because they understand. You lose things to the woods sometimes, and the woods keep what they're owed. You light fires every night now, not for warmth, for boundary. Flame becomes language. The brighter the fire, the less it comes close. That thing in the shadows. That presence that now seems built into the bones of your house. The weaver stops weaving. She boards up her windows and paints her door with ash. But the sound of the loom continues inside. Whir click. Whir click. You pass by and hear her weeping. Historians still debate whether widespread isolation during medieval disasters bred mass hysteria or deeper mystical insight. That's what they might say. That these events were coping mechanisms. That the hallucinations were grief. That the shared fear was social contagion. But what do they know of black thread plants and upside-down shadows? What do they know of spinning cloth that hums? You notice that no birds have been seen in days. Not one. No crows on the roof. No sparrows in the barn rafters. Just silence. You try to pray, but the words don't come out right. They bend in your throat. You whisper the Lord's Prayer and hear it answered backwards, like wind against your teeth. So you stop. You stop resisting. You listen instead. To the spinning, to the patterns, to the soft voice of the world, finally speaking again. One night you find the weaver in your doorway. She carries a bolt of cloth, black and white and red all at once. She doesn't speak, just sets it down and leaves. You unfold it. It shows your home, your garden, your face, and something standing behind you. You do not turn. You do not scream. You sit down beside the fire, wrap the cloth around your shoulders, and begin to hum the tune that no one taught you, but that you now know by heart. Whir click, whir click. The loom of the world has resumed its rhythm, and you're part of it now. The silence that binds. You stop measuring time in days and start measuring it in silences. The silence before the wind shifts. The silence after the last chicken crows. The silence when the rain begins to fall. Only inside the house. These silences stretch, fold, and bend around you like invisible wool. You wear them without realizing. They settle in your bones, soften your steps, and curl your thoughts inward. Soon, even your own heartbeat feels too loud. So you hold your breath. You move gently. You become one of them, the quiet things. You don't remember the last time someone knocked at your door. Or maybe they did, and you didn't open it. You pass the baker's home one morning and find the oven cold, the door hanging loose. Inside, loaves of half-made bread are growing hair. No one is there, just a bowl of flour moving slightly as though something inside is breathing. You step away. The village has not emptied, not entirely, but its people are fading. They walk hunched, eyes cast down, lips moving in prayer or curses. You're not sure anymore which is which. A child offers you a twig tied with red ribbon. When you take it, she screams. The ribbon burns your palm. Later, when you unravel it, it's not a twig at all. It's bone, tiny, human. You bury it in the garden, not because you believe it'll help, but because you hope it will. Hope is strange now, not the bright thing it once was. It's not a candle in the dark. It's a spark that jumps unpredictably, flashing hot and dangerous before vanishing again. You feel it sometimes when you boil broth or scrub the floor or look out at the woods and imagine, just for a moment, running into the trees and not stopping. Historians still argue whether villagers during times of intense spiritual or environmental duress experience something like mass hallucination, or if their perception of reality simply shifted into another mode, a survival mode, a mystical mode. You wonder if you've entered that mode too, or if this is simply the shape of reality now, one that no longer includes the rules you once lived by. The stars, when they appear, are wrong. They move, slowly, in patterns that make your stomach turn. The constellations are unfamiliar. One looks like a hook, one like a jaw, one like a wound. You don't look at them anymore. Instead, you begin to focus on listening for patterns, for codes. The river hums at dusk. 3 notes, always the same. You hum them back and feel your teeth ache. The well gurgles in syllables. The trees creak like door hinges. You start writing it all down, not with ink but with bits of thread you sew into cloth. Shapes, symbols, a new language. One morning, you wake to find a strip of fabric tied around your wrist. You didn't put it there. It bears one of your symbols, one you hadn't sewn yet. A loop crossed by a line. You don't remove it, because you understand now, this isn't just survival. It's transformation. The old world, the world of harvests and markets and sermons, is gone. In its place is this twilight space, this in-between, where the veil has thinned and your role is no longer to labor, but to witness. There are others who understand. You see them at the edge of the village. Not exactly people. Not exactly not. They wear faces that flicker. They bow when you pass. Once you hear them speaking in the voice of your mother, though she's been dead for years. They leave you offerings, teeth, stones, knotted hair. You take them. Not out of fear, but etiquette. It's rude to refuse a gift. You start dreaming in long corridors, not of buildings, but of memory. You walk down your own past, opening doors that never existed. Inside, you see moments twisted. Your childhood dog with no eyes. Your first kiss, but the face changes every second. Your mother again, standing in a doorway that bleeds light. Sometimes, the dreams don't end. You wake only to find yourself dreaming again. The difference between sleep and waking becomes unimportant. You begin to feel chosen, not in a holy way, in an ancient way. Like the land itself has plucked you out and said, this one, this mind, this body, let it carry the new story, and so you do. You begin writing that story, not with ink or parchment, but with breath, with motion, with where your feet walk and where your hands linger, and what songs you hum at dawn. You visit the chapel one last time. It has collapsed inward, not from storm or rot, but from surrender. The priest is gone, his robes folded neatly on the altar. On the wall behind it, someone or something has drawn a new symbol, a circle filled with smaller circles radiating outward. You trace it with your fingers and feel warmth, and for the first time in weeks you smile, because you know what it means. This is not the end. This is the blooming. This is the moment when the skin of the old world peels back, and underneath is something not entirely cruel, just different, older, hungrier, more honest. That night, the spinning stops. The loom rests. You wake and find your windows open. Not broken, not forced, just open. The mist is gone. The stars return to their familiar places. Birds sing. Not all of them, but some. The earth has settled. For now. You boil tea, you sweep, you stitch, but you don't forget. And sometimes, in the stillness between tasks, you hum that three-note tune. And something, somewhere, hums it back. The day the wind changed. You wake before dawn as always, but something is different. The air feels restless, like it's been holding its breath. The wind whistles through the cracks in the walls, but it's not the direction it usually blows. It used to come from the hills, from the north, cool and biting, but now it comes from the south, warm and unfamiliar, curling around corners like a question not yet asked. You rise, step outside, and the sky is red. Not blood red, glowing red, like coals beneath a thin veil of ash. The color stains the rooftops, the animals, your own skin. The villagers gather in silence. No one speaks. A dog howls once and then falls quiet forever. Something has shifted. Again. You hear the whir click of the loom, but you're not near the weaver's cottage. It's coming from the well. You approach slowly, the sound getting louder. Inside, instead of water, there's fabric. Black, red, gray, threaded with teeth and twigs and petals. It pulses like a heartbeat. You stagger back. That day the birds fly backward. Not all at once, but in pockets. A flock near the chapel loops, then reverses midair. Their cries echo as if played in reverse. The sound curdles your stomach. The priest's robe, still folded in the chapel, begins to unravel, the threads rising on their own, drifting toward the steeple like smoke. A woman screams. It's the midwife. You rush to her house. Inside, the walls are covered in soot drawings, dozens of tiny figures, all faceless, all weeping. She doesn't notice you. She's humming, rocking back and forth, a small bundle in her arms wrapped in moss. It's not a baby, it's a stone. You leave quietly. Outside, the trees have begun to lean, not from wind, from intention. Their trunks curve inward toward the center of the village like a circle closing. The sky deepens in color. The air crackles, as if the very fabric of the world is stretched too tight. Historians still argue whether the most extreme cases of medieval mass delusion, such as the dancing plague of 1518, were the result of contaminated grain, hysteria, or spiritual possession. But what if it was something else? What if reality had seams? And those seams occasionally fray. You feel them now. The village is unraveling at the edges. A boy speaks in a tongue no one taught him. A pig gives birth to a rabbit. The stream flows uphill. A woman gives birth to a child with no shadow. No one blinks anymore. The black flowers are blooming everywhere now. They whisper your name as you pass. You begin carrying salt in your pockets. Not because you think it will help, but because you need some ritual, some gesture of resistance. You sprinkle it in your doorway, along the garden path, in the fire pit. The fire hisses when it touches it. It's not normal, but nothing is. The wind grows stronger. It doesn't gust. It pulls. It wants something. Your memories, your warmth, your stories. You speak them aloud in the attic, trying to keep them grounded. You tell the walls about your mother, your first kiss, the way you used to sneak honey from the cellar. You remember everything you can, because the forgetting has begun. Names vanish first, then faces. You greet your neighbor and don't know who they are. You hold a spoon and forget what it does. You see your reflection and think that's someone else. You blink and it is. You gather the symbols you've stitched over these strange days. You lay them out like runes on the table. The pattern that forms is coherent, terrifyingly so. A spiral, a storm, a face, your own. You understand then. This isn't a haunting. It's a becoming. The world isn't crumbling. It's shedding. The village is not cursed. It's being transformed into its true self, beyond the veil, beyond the illusion of fields and fences and walls. You aren't losing your mind. You're gaining another one attuned to the whisper between winds, one that hears the world not as noise, but as a language. The black stalks, they're not weeds, they're antennae. The red sky, not fire. The mist, not weather, a messenger. Everything is speaking, and you're finally listening. The spinning begins again, not from any loom, but from inside your ears. A rhythm that pulses behind your eyes. You close them and see the new map. It shows your village still here, but also elsewhere, overlapping with another place made of memory, of myth, of hunger. You feel no fear now, just readiness. The wind stops, dead stillness. You walk outside. Every villager stands motionless in their doorways, as if waiting, as if called. A sound like a bell but deeper, felt not heard. You raise your arms, and something raises them with you. The veil tears, the true village breathes, and you become part of it. Section 12. The world beneath the village. There's no going back. Not just metaphorically, not in that poetic you've changed sort of way. No, physically, geographically, something has shifted. The roads that once led out of the village no longer end in other towns. They don't lead anywhere at all. You walk one, hoping to find the miller's path. But 5 steps in, it loops. Trees reposition themselves, stones move beneath your feet. By the time you return home, it's night again, though you only left an hour ago. The forest has closed its eye, and under it, the world begins to pulse. You first notice it when the floorboards breathe, not creak, rising and falling beneath your feet like the chest of some massive sleeping creature. You freeze, you listen, and then you do the only thing that feels right. You lie down, ear to wood, and you wait. Thump, 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 a heartbeat, not yours. You sit up, heart racing. You test the walls, the stones in the fireplace, the beams above your bed. All warm, all faintly alive. You are living on something. Underneath the village is not earth, not soil and stone and fossil. Something older, yes, but also dreaming, waiting, listening back. That night your dreams are not dreams at all. They are maps, vertical maps, downward maps. You see corridors beneath the streets, ancient staircases spiraling into impossible darkness. At the center, a room made of bone and salt. You wake and your hands are covered in soil, and in your palm clutched tightly, a key. You don't own a key. It's not metal. It's carved from some white, porous material, lighter than bone, smooth like polished root. It hums, faintly, and you know, without knowing how, where it belongs. You go to the well. You've avoided it since the day the fabric rose. But now it calls to you again, and this time there is no terror, only a terrible curiosity, the kind that hums low in the belly, the kind that pushes open old doors. You lower the bucket and listen. Nothing. Then a click. The rope jerks. The bucket returns empty, but the pulley spins on its own, faster and faster until the stone rim begins to glow faintly. A new passage is forming. You see it, bricks rearranging, roots untangling, the earth giving birth to a path that was never meant to be found. You climb down, slowly. With every rung, your breath shortens. The air thickens. It smells of ash and mint and copper. The ladder ends in a stone hallway, damp, echoing, lined with carvings that look like saints. If saints had wings like beetles and mouths that open sideways, you should be afraid. You aren't. Historians still argue whether legends of thin places, locations where the veil between the worlds is weak, were ever rooted in physical spaces, or whether they were purely spiritual metaphors. But you're here now, inside one, and the air is humming with truth. You follow the corridor, guided only by the low pulse that resonates through your ribs. Occasionally you hear sounds, whispers in languages that tangle themselves into knots, the drip of unseen liquid, the rustle of robes that may not be there. The key begins to glow. You reach a door. Not a door in the traditional sense. There's no hinge, no handle, just a solid slab of ivory embedded in the wall. But the key floats from your hand, presses itself into the center, and the slab melts. On the other side, a cathedral of roots. Not a crypt, not a cathedral, vast and echoing, lit from nowhere or everywhere. Vines stretch from floor to ceiling, pulsing with faint green light. Statues line the walls, figures wearing masks, draped in veils, their eyes covered by coins. In the center, a bowl. Inside, water, perfectly still. You step forward, and the moment your reflection catches your eye, everything changes. The water shows you not yourself, but every version of you that could have been. You as a nun, you as a burned heretic, you as a midwife who died in childbirth, you as a child never born, you as a creature, eyes black and wide, crawling through tunnels like this one, and then your real face, not the one the mirror knows, the one underneath. You reach into the bowl. It is not water. It is memory, cold, thick, whispering. Your fingers close around something solid. You pull out a pendant, smooth, black, and carved with a symbol you now recognize, the spiral within the eye. You place it around your neck. The cathedral breathes in, the world tilts, and then you wake, but not in your bed, not even in your house. You wake in the center of the village, surrounded by every other soul who has survived the unraveling. They wear their own pendants, their own truths, their own new names. No one speaks, because they no longer need to. The village is not a village now. It is an organ in a greater being. You are one cell among many, and for the first time you feel whole. Section 13, the Feast of Forgotten Names. The village has changed, utterly and permanently. What once was a place of thatched roofs, crooked fences, and muddy paths is now a living mosaic, a cathedral without walls. Buildings bend slightly toward the center, as if listening. Paths shift under your feet, guiding you where you need to be before you even know you need to be there. No one farms anymore. No one gathers firewood. The land provides, but not with crops or game. It gives in other ways. You awaken each morning with what you require already at hand. A warm garment, a loaf of bread, a jug of spring water, set neatly outside your door, woven in reeds or growing directly from the stone. No one asks where these things come from. You all know the answer now. And in the heart of this strange new harmony, an invitation is given, not in speech but in sensation, a hunger in the chest, not for food but for gathering, a yearning to assemble. And so, without discussion, you prepare the Feast of Forgotten Names. You don't remember who first named it, or whether it was ever named aloud. But the moment you think of it, others do too. You feel the mutual pull. Preparation begins at dawn, though time now flows differently. The sun pauses longer at the horizon. The sky hangs in a permanent twilight hue, deep plum and navy streaked with silver veins. It's beautiful, but unsettling, like a dream you know you'll never wake from. You gather herbs that glow faintly at the tips, harvested only when the ground sings beneath your feet. Others bring crystalline fruits that grow from rock. A child offers a basket of moss that smells like sweet wine. A widow lays down a fish she caught by speaking to the stream. No one uses fire to cook. The food prepares itself when placed on obsidian slabs beneath the central tree, the one that wasn't there 2 weeks ago, but which now casts a shadow in all directions at once. You arrange the table, but it's not a table. It's the back of something vast and sleeping. You don't question it. The village gathers. Faces once weathered by time now shine with a translucent sheen. No one speaks aloud anymore, and yet no thought is lost. Eyes meet, and entire stories pass between them. You remember everything and nothing. You remember who you were and what you surrendered to remain. The first course is silence. All sit, all remember. Not in words, but in the twitch of the jaw, the moistening of an eye, the slight tremble of fingers over an untouched cup. Each person lays a token in front of them, a piece of who they were, given to the feast. A girl offers her braid, cut before sunrise. A man lays down his wedding band. A mother places a doll missing an eye. You offer a torn scrap of linen embroidered with your true name, half forgotten now, but stitched once by your own hands. You do not eat with your mouth. You taste with your skin. The food dissolves on contact. A berry placed in your palm floods your vision with images. A barn collapsing under snow, a kiss under the gallows, a cradle left floating downstream. None of it yours. All of it familiar. You are consuming memory. Some weep, some laugh, some simply stare upward as if seeing the first stars of a new cosmos. Historians, of course, never recorded this event. Why would they? How could they? Perhaps the feast happened only in myth, a symbolic rite imagined in monastic hallucination. Or perhaps it happened in places where history refused to look, in pockets of space-time too soft and strange for parchment and ink to hold. The final course is the song. There is no instrument, no language, only rhythm and breath and the thrum of something rising from the earth into your body. A sound made not with vocal cords, but with intention. Everyone joins, even the trees, especially the trees. The great central trunk sways though no wind blows. Its bark peels gently, revealing glowing lines underneath. Names, hundreds, thousands, written in spirals and arcs, in scripts that seem familiar until you try to read them. Your fingers tingle. The pendant around your neck grows warm. You reach out to touch the bark and you see, not with eyes, with knowing. The names are not just names. They're the memory of the people you used to be across lifetimes. your spirit in other forms, as warrior, as widow, as wolf, as star, all etched here in this moment, recognized, remembered, forgiven. You realize then this feast is not just about what you've given up, it's about who you have always been, and now you're ready. Because the feast is not the end, it is the preparation for what comes after. The sky above cracks slightly, just a hairline fracture, a silver seam in the dome of the world. No one panics, no one flees. You all rise, arms lifting of their own accord. The village hums, and the hum becomes a chord, and the chord becomes a door, one you are all stepping through together, hand in hand, shadow and light, silence and song. The threshold beyond the sky, you do not step through the door, you dissolve into it. One moment, your feet press against soil, the scent of moss and memory thick in your nose. The next, there's no ground at all, no sky, no air, no village, not even a body to carry you through it. You've become something else, something between, a thought with weight, a breath without lungs, a voice that no longer needs sound. The threshold welcomes you. It does not look like anything recognizable. It feels like walking through the inside of a bell right as it rings, a sound that shatters and heals at once, a memory of light you've never seen yet recognize more deeply than your own mother's face. This is not death, this is revelation, because now you see. You see the village not as it was, not as it pretended to be, but as it always was. A vessel, a cocoon, a carefully tended seedbed for something far larger than crops and houses and names carved into headstones. It is a convergence point, a place where timelines tangle and dreams grow roots, where the veil between worlds is not a curtain, but a door left gently ajar. The ancestors knew it, the invaders feared it, the priests tried to bury it, but it sang on, beneath the stones, waiting for the right collection of souls to arrive and stay long enough to hear it. You were that soul, so were the others. Together, you became a chord, a resonance strong enough to activate the lock. Not through sacrifice or ritual, but through simple survival, through shared grief, through quiet longing, through sleepless nights and unspoken prayers, through laughter that pierced the silence, through dreams shared across generations. Now you float through the threshold, a space without compass or clock. Images bloom around you, not in sequence, but in resonance. Moments with emotional gravity. You see the day you first tasted fear, the night your hands shook in wonder, the first lie you told and why, the kiss you never dared to give, the friend you failed, the thing you chose to forget. None of it accuses you. All of it sees you. Historians might say this is a metaphor, that the threshold is a literary device, a symbolic confrontation with one's own subconscious. That dream spaces like this echo myths from Norse sagas or mystic Christian visions of limbo. Maybe they're right, but they don't know what it feels like to float through yourself, to become the map. And then the map folds. You land, not on dirt, on understanding. You are standing in a great hall made entirely of breath. Every step you take leaves behind a brief shimmer in the shape of your foot before the ground exhales and resets. Around you, others arrive, the entire village, drifting down in silence, each bearing the glow of their own realization. In the center, the archive, not a library, not a temple, a sphere of memory, floating, pulsing, inviting. You step forward and place your pendant into the current that spins around it. The symbol spirals open, revealing a thread, your thread, in a tapestry that stretches endlessly in all directions. You follow its twists, its sudden cuts, its repairs. You see where your lineage was rewritten, where your name became a story, where your pain became fuel for another's healing. And now you get to decide what story continues. This is the true test, not survival, not resistance, choice. You may return, pendant still warm, to the village, rebuilt now in harmony with the world it resides upon. No longer a forgotten outpost on a crumbling map, but a beacon. Or you may step further into the garden beyond gardens, a place without time, where those who no longer need names walk among stars and memory and silence. There is no wrong answer, but you must choose. You reach toward the thread, but wait, a final memory. Before you decide, the archive grants you a gift, a perfect recollection of one forgotten night from childhood. Rain tapping the shutters, a blanket too small, a candle burning low, and a song hummed by someone long gone, floating from another room. It wasn't important at the time, but here in this place it holds the weight of an entire lifetime. You press that memory into your chest, and it glows. The others begin to choose, one by one. Some vanish into starlight. Others return, reshaped but whole, ready to rebuild. You step forward. The threshold waits. Patient as always, you take one breath, and then you decide. Section 15, when the sky forgot the sun. You've chosen to return, not because it's easier, not because it's safer, but because it feels right. There's something about the weight of a world still turning, still struggling, that calls to you. You're not done here, not yet. When your feet touch ground again, it's not the same dirt you left behind. The village is quieter now. Still, not empty, but waiting. The air feels like it's been holding its breath, like the sky itself forgot the sun for a moment too long. Gray clouds coil above in thin, swirling bands that seem painted rather than real. Nothing moves until you take your first step. Then, as if given permission, the world stirs. Grass bends gently, leaves shift with a sigh. A dog barks in the distance, an echo of the ordinary reminding you where you are. But the ordinary isn't ordinary anymore. You walk down the path to your home and find it just as you left it. Roof slightly bowed, door askew. The bowl on the table still holding the dried husks of last week's grain. But something has shifted in you, and the house notices. The floor creaks in greeting, the walls exhale. You are known here, and now you know yourself. People begin to return in the days that follow. From across the woods, from the threshold, from the edge of the strange. Not all return as they were. Some have eyes like molten silver, others walk with a different cadence. A few speak in gestures, their mouths no longer necessary. But all carry the same thing, recognition. The village becomes a place of keepers, of watchers, of rememberers. It does not shout its truths from mountaintops. It doesn't send messengers to the cities. It doesn't carve new names into the walls of cathedrals. Instead, it remembers, quietly, patiently, like a heart that never stops burning. You resume your place among them, not as farmer or widow or dreamer, but as someone who went beyond and returned with the light still in your eyes. There are still days of silence, still mornings when the rain taps too hard on the windows, still nights when the wind sounds like whispering voices. But now you understand, none of it is to be feared. They're reminders that the door still exists, that it can be opened again if needed. You spend your time weaving, not cloth, but memory, stories into patterns, names into shawls. You gift them to the children, who wear them like armor. They do not yet understand the power stitched into the threads, but one day they will. One night, an old woman who never left takes your hand and places something small in your palm. A seed, not of a plant, but of a place. Bury it, she says, when you're ready to let someone else remember. And so in the final days of autumn, as frost kisses the tips of leaves, you walk out to the meadow just beyond the edge of the old path, the one where the grass grows in a slow spiral, and you press the seed into the earth. The ground hums softly in reply. You don't look back. You don't need to. The village will sleep now, until it is needed again. And somewhere, maybe in your time, maybe in another, a child will dream of a door in the sky, of a feast held beneath a tree with shadows that stretch forever, and of names written not in ink, but in light. Because stories like this don't end. They just grow roots. Wind down. The night settles slowly now, like a blanket tucked beneath your chin. The storm has passed. The sky, once fractured and strange, softens into a deep, endless blue. Crickets begin to chirp in the distance, and the last traces of twilight sigh into darkness. You're warm, though the air is cool. You're still, though the story spins on beyond you. And most of all, you're safe. The village, in whatever form it may now take, lives inside you. Not in memory, but in rhythm, in heartbeat, in breath. Its paths wind quietly through your thoughts. Its bells ring faintly beneath your dreams, and its threshold waits, not with urgency, but with welcome. The feast is over, but you are fed. The journey is done, but you are full of steps. You've seen what lies beyond the map, past the last page of the chronicle. Not dragons or oblivion, but understanding, connection, and maybe a little magic, the kind that only whispers, never shouts. So as you lie here now, body sinking into mattress or couch or floor, let that story drift away like candle smoke. Let it unravel gently, thread by thread, until it no longer binds you but holds you. You did not need to survive the village. You only needed to remember it. And you have. So sleep now, rest easy. And if the wind hums a strange song outside your window, perhaps it's just the threshold singing you softly home. End of script. Sweet dreams.